You very convincingly show that references to and appeals to the Moses story have kind of pervaded American history. And I hadn't really thought about, and you make the case that in that sense, Moses is in a sense more important than Jesus. And I'm wondering if, well, I'll ask later if you've gotten any blowback from Christians on that. Right. But I had never really thought about it before, how Moses, in a way, does make more sense. I mean, Jesus is a fascinating figure, but in a certain sense, he's just not conventionally heroic, for one thing, right? I mean...
Well, I think let's talk about this Moses-Jesus thing, because it's certainly where a lot of the chatter has inevitably fallen about the book. And I would say, so first of all, as you would say, let me state my case. And my case is that, of course, Jesus is important to American life. America was essentially 100% Christian at its founding. It's, depending on what survey you want to believe, 80% Christian today. But if you look at the themes of Jesus' life, love, poverty, charity, building a kingdom of heaven, these are ideas that would not make a list of defining traits of American public life. They are more important to Americans' private lives. And as one prominent Christian told me when I was engaging this in conversation, you can't be Jesus, right? That Jesus is an other type of figure in most of the Christian traditions. Whereas Moses is, first of all, besides being a much more human figure, he's got doubts, he's reticent, he's reluctant, he gets angry, and all these things that we know. That the thing about Jesus is, Moses is the themes of his life: standing up to authority, leading people out of oppression, dreaming of a promised land, turning a kind of wandering people into a nation of laws. These would be on a list of the defining American traits. So the issue is, in the great public transformation, or my point is, in the great public transformations of American life, certainly, I mean, we're coming up on Thanksgiving here. When the Pilgrims got here in 1620, and you go back and you read what they were saying on the Mayflower, they weren't quoting Jesus, they were quoting Moses time and time again. And Jesus was so not important to the Pilgrims in many ways. They didn't even celebrate Christmas that first year, because Christmas wasn't in the Bible. They were very, in their minds, I don't like to use this term, but Old Testament oriented. I prefer the term Hebrew Bible. But they were very Old Testament oriented. And again, when I came to see you, I was in Princeton doing research, as you recall, right. and we took a walk that afternoon, and I came across this study at the Princeton Theological Seminary, which is, of course, quoted in my book now, about these two academics set out in 1973 to read everything published in American history from 1765 to 1805. Everything published in the colonies. It ended up being 15,000 items. Their stated goal, was to determine who was more important in the Revolution. The old debate, was it the Enlightenment writers or was it the classics? The first sentence of their study says, if we ask what book was most quoted during the Revolutionary era, the answer, somewhat surprisingly, in their words, is the book of Deuteronomy. As, of course, the fifth of the 5 books of Moses is the one that recapitulates the story. So if American life has always been about this tension between kind of the secular strand and the religious strand, and we can move forward through the Civil War era, through the Civil Rights era, up to today, this story, time and again, people have gone back to, because it is a story about nation building at its core, and that is not the main theme of the Jesus story.
No, liberation is not the main theme of the Jesus story. It may have been one thing on Jesus' actual political agenda, liberation from the Roman Empire, but it's not what we remember him for.
Well, but liberation, but even in the American story, liberation is only half of it. The other half of it is law, is responsibility.
Right, and you, although, I mean, the liberation part keeps coming in handy in keeping Moses in the American story. I mean, abolitionism, Statue of Liberty, and so on. But you're right. I mean, the other thing you did, I think that time that you were in Princeton, was go talk to Michael Walzer, right?
And what Michael Walzer said to me was, and he wrote a book called Exodus and Revolution, which has some of these themes, which is a wonderful book. And in his proposition is that Moses doesn't just provide the template for revolution, that the Moses story introduces the idea of revolution into Western civilization. He actually goes much further. And I think that this